This is your radio Bible teacher, Dr. David Depew, welcoming you to the Seed of Abraham program, where we take time to again consider the greatness and faithfulness of God. We are continuing our series of programs called In the Fullness of Time, and we're looking at events that led up to the coming of Jesus Christ. We're seeing some of the political events, the religious events, historical events that went on that showed us, that can show us nowadays in looking at the Scripture and the teaching and ministry of Jesus and comparing that and seeing what was happening in the life of other people coming up to this time, how it was very appropriate that he came in the fullness of time, as is listed in Galatians chapter 4 and verse 4. We talked in a previous program about Antiochus Epiphanes, who polluted the temple in Jerusalem, and then how the temple was cleansed, and the Maccabees took over, and then the Hasmoneans, and they were both priests and kings. And there were people that apparently left the community. Some of them went down, it looks like they went to Qumran, the area near the Dead Sea, and built a community. The scholars are still trying to figure out exactly who lived there and how long they lived there. We know pretty well how long they lived there and the different time periods they lived there, but they collected a great number of documents, and apparently some of these people left the main community in Jerusalem because they were very upset about the way that things were going. The buying and selling of the high priesthood was not proper. They pointed this out, and there were various things that they did not like. It's interesting that these people apparently collected different portions of Scripture from different Jewish communities and maintained some of these and kept some of these in caves around the Dead Sea. And these are what have been found so far, and these are called the Dead Sea Scrolls. Portions of Scripture, portions of commentary, and then some of them are writings that tell about running their community or other communities as religious ones. And it is from this that we actually have the oldest copies of large portions of the ancient Hebrew Scriptures. So this is very exciting to find these, and these confirm the accuracy of the Hebrew Scriptures that have been passed down to us, so that we know we can rely upon it as being historically accurate and good for religious purposes. Now, one of the things that made some of the communities there at Qumran and other devout religious Hebrews upset with the Greek civilization that had come over into the Roman civilization and was spread into so much of the world were these various things. One was that there was a traditional worship of the gods of Mount Olympus. There were many of these gods, and it's hard to even recall the names of all of these unless you've particularly studied those, but that was one of the heathen pagan things that had come into the Roman world. Another was the worship of the emperor. The emperor in Rome was worshipped as a god, and it was interesting how this occurred and how people thought that the ashes going up to heaven, up into the sky, when they burned the body of the emperor, that this indicated that he was really of a heavenly being, and these ashes and soot that were going up into the sky indicated this. Another were the agricultural gods, Dionysus, Demeter, and Persephone, these different gods that were picked up from the Greeks and carried over into the Roman world. Then even Ptolemy, down in Egypt, created a new Greek-Egyptian god. He called it Serapis. And there was astrology, of course, that came over. We know the ancient Babylonians had astrology. There were the Greek astrology things and fortune-telling, and this came over into the Roman world. And then there was the goddess Tyche, Tyche, the goddess of fortune, we call now good fortune, or fortunate. This goddess was worshipped. And then magic was tried to be used in order to bend and twist the forces of nature. People thought they could have magic that would do this. So the Romans inherited all of these from the Greeks. Another thing that came into this time period that Jesus had to face when he was here was a little easier, and it was something that was actually helpful, and this is what is called the peripatetic method, or the method of walking and teaching at the same time. And this was popularized by different Greek philosophers particularly, and they would walk and talk with their students and explain things as they went along, sometimes pointing out illustrations. And this was what Jesus did when he was here on earth. He taught people to discuss life and to face reality, not to escape it. Christianity is not an escape, but it is truly facing reality and facing what God has done and realizing what is actually true. And one of the methods for teaching this is to walk and talk at the same time. Then another exciting thing that came about just before the time of Christ that greatly aided in the growth of the church which he established, and that was the Roman peace, or the Pax Romana. During the wartime in Rome, what happened, there was a god they called the god of war, Janus, Janus, and the doors of the temple of this god were left open when wars were going on. However, there came a time of peace. At least the Romans thought it was peace in the Roman world, and so they said that this peace was symbolized in 49 BC when Octavian Caesar declared that there was peace, and he went and he publicly, in a ceremony, closed the doors of the god of war. And now it's interesting that because of that peace that the gospel was able to spread throughout the empire. However, we know that there has not been actual peace since then. Wars have gone on in many different places of the world. Now this Octavian Caesar, which I mentioned, closed the doors of the temple of the god of war in 29 BC, was a very interesting man. He liked to appear as a very humble man. And what happened in 27 BC? Well, he was given a title by the Roman Senate that seemed to just exactly fit this man. He was a very humble man, you have to understand, but he was really more than a man. They thought he was something really superhuman about his aspect, and he was very close to the gods. And so because of this, he very graciously accepted the title of Augustus. The word Augustus has to do with what we think of something being august, very important, supreme importance, very powerful. And this was the highest honor that they could give to him. And so he was named Augustus instead of Octavian Caesar. And so he's the one that we now know as Augustus. And as a matter of fact, one of the Roman months, Sextilius, was changed to the name August. And so our month of August is the one that was named after Octavian Caesar and his name being changed. Now, out in the eastern countries, he became a living god. And back in Italy, he established a college of priests who was founded to promote people worshiping him, to worship this man's deity. So this is something that devout people would be thinking about. Is it proper for someone to be called Augustus? Is this man really that close to God? And so on. So it was very interesting. In the same year, he was given by the Roman officials, the others in the Senate and so on, he was given direct command over Syria, which also included Palestine at that time in 27 BC. And then in 12 BC, this Augustus Caesar was declared to be Pontificus Maximus, or the chief priest of the state religion there in Rome, of this idol worshipping, and of himself even being almost like a god. And so he rebuilt the temple of Jupiter, and he tried to get people once again to also worship Romulus, who was supposed to be the founder of Rome, and to worship the goddess Venus. So we see the heathen idolatry that was abounding, that was going on just 20, 30 years before the birth of Jesus. And Jesus would be coming into a situation like that. And then, of course, there were the Roman roads, which we mentioned before. And because of the peace that was promoted and the wars that went on before that, the Romans had built roads throughout their empire. And certainly you can see Roman roads in North Africa today. You can see them in the Middle East. You can see them in Turkey and in Greece. You can see them in Italy, of course, and over even in England, and various places in Spain. And as you can see, Roman roads that were built that even last today. Nowadays, the modern roads often go near these, and you can see them from the modern roads because they also cut along the same way and going through the hills and so on. These roads allowed the spread of Christianity throughout the Roman Empire and the spread of the gospel, and so these were really a blessing, and we can see why Jesus came at that time and established his church so that this would be promoted in that way. We thank you for the support and interest in this broadcast. This is your radio Bible teacher, Dr. David Depew, inviting you to listen in again next time to the Seed of Abraham. You can write to us at the Seed of Abraham, Post Office Box 842, that is Box 842, Alhambra, Alhambra, California, in the United States of America. Goodbye for now, and may God bless you as you study His Word.